Welcome, welcome to Muvahood Unfiltered. Straight shots, no chasers. It's your girl, B. Ivy, and welcome to episode 7, guys. I will have our co host here today, Dozier, and we're going to be getting into a wonderful conversation with a woman that is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's so knowledgeable, guys. I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation. And this is part 1, okay? So, we got some things for you. So we're going to bring Amarri up, let her introduce herself, and we getting into this. Get your notepads ready because y'all going to want to take some notes, all right? Let's go. Episode 7.
Hello there. My name is Amarri Simms, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, mother, and leader in the field of wellness. My mission is to empower and support individuals and communities in their journey towards healing, growth, and self-actualization. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to our discussion.
All right. Welcome, Amarri. Thank you for that introduction. All right. So what we do before we get started here is grab our little drinky drink and have us a toast. And what are we toasting to, Miss Simms?
Abundance.
Abundance. I love it in all areas of life. Yes.
Mm-hmm. All areas.
And we're here for it.
All right, everybody. Now we're going to get into my favorite game called Mother Minute, right? And it's really the concept is this or that. And it's rapid fire answers. We want to know what your choice will be out of the 2 options, just to kind of break the ice and get everything rolling. So I'm going to let Brooke take it away.
All right. So couples therapy or group therapy, Amarri?
Couples.
Okay. Are we going with a margarita or sangria?
Margarita.
Okay. Do we want a hotel with a beach view or a cabin with the mountain view?
Beach girl.
Beach. Okay. Cali. All righty.
All right. So what's your favorite drinking holiday if you have one? Is it Cinco de Mayo or St. Patrick's Day?
Neither. If I had to pick a drinking holiday, it would be New Year's Eve. That's my favorite.
New Year's Eve. Okay. Dancing, a night out dancing with your girls or a movie night with the hubby?
A night out dancing with the girls. Yes. I mean, you know, I love to go to the movies by myself. So, yeah, no. A night out dancing with the girls all the way. That would be fun, relaxing. Yeah. Let your hair down. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so right now there's a lot of rap beefs going on. So is it Drake or Kendrick?
Oh, I gotta say this, and it's hard. It's hard for me with Drake, right? It's hard because he, in the beginning, Degrassi High Drake, he wasn't really rapping Black folks. He wasn't repping us that much. He was really big on his Jewish heritage. No shade. So I gotta go with Kendrick on this one. As much as I don't really like, putting everybody's business and all that dirty, I gotta go with Kendrick. Plus he's from the sea, so I gotta go with Kendrick.
It's Kung Fu Kenny all day over here, so I'm in full support. Okay, so one more rap beef. So are you going with Chris Brown or Quavo?
Listen,
or singers beef? Yes.
I'm a Chris Breezy fan. I listen, I know what he did, what he didn't do, what everybody did. I get it. He is super talented, and yeah, I gotta go with Breezy. Plus he's also from VA, which is that also has part of my heart as I grew up there a little bit as well. So
I think that's a good choice. I think that Christopher's talent is unmatched. So when you say like Quavo versus Christopher, it's like there's like several talents, a plethora of talents versus like maybe one, skill set. And also, like you said, everybody has past transgressions. That doesn't mean that I agree or disagree with what happened, but I think when it comes to Hollywood, there's always multiple versions of the story, and I think that young Christopher felt like he should just take all of the heat for something because he was in love. And I'm gonna leave that one where that was at.
Exactly. We can't take all of the heat. It always takes 2, but and Quavo, where Quavo come from? I have a 20-year-old. So my kid was rocking in the backseat. Like, come on now. Quavo is new. I gotta go with the OG. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And like you said, where did he come from? Like, where did you, Quavo? Where did you? Right. In the one of the dishes is called The Weakest Link, and I was like, gosh. I mean, I'm with you when you're right, Christopher. I mean, out of the Migos, Quavo's probably my least favorite. So, my favorite was Takeoff, R.I.P.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. That was devastating.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's the Mother Minute, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.
That's pretty dope.
That's fun. All right. So this is a topic that I have been anxious to get to. Narcissism. I see a lot of, chatter on social media around, oh, this word is misused so much. Even my pastor has said that in one of his sermons. And I was speaking with a guy friend the other day, and he's like, well, more women are narcissistic than men. And I'm like, okay. From things that I have read, it doesn't say that, but we're going to clear that up with you. We're going to clear it up with you. What, is this term overused? And who do you tend to see have more narcissistic traits, men or women?
A great question. It's a critical thinking question in the world of psychology, right? So the first thing is there are lots of common misconceptions about narcissism. I do think the term is being overused and thrown around very randomly, especially, in the Black community, which is unfortunate. So so a lot of people think that narcissism is, being self-involved, loving yourself, loving your selfies, a bunch of selfies, being in the mirror all the time. And that can be part of it, right? The grandiosity, but narcissism at its core is very much rooted in insecurity and fear. It is more about someone emotionally hoarding, right, their true self, their emotional self, versus putting it all out there, right, and being confident about it. A lot of one misconception is that it can't be treated, which that's just not true. It can be treated with, usually it's really regular, what we would call more intensive therapy aimed at helping to develop empathy and self-awareness, which is two characteristics that, narcissists commonly don't have. Actually, there's three: empathy, self-awareness, and accountability. They will shy away from those things. So it is an intense self-focus. They do tend to overvalue themselves and their abilities. They have a need for attention and admiration, right? That's where that insecurity comes from. And it can often be at the expense of other people's feelings. And that's why it can be hurtful to be in relationships with these people. So, this is like, they believe they are the star of the show, but not only they're the star of the show can't happen without them. Like, there is no show without them, right? And so there's lots of different flavors and types of narcissism, and they all have their unique characteristics. But you mentioned, okay, male and females, right? So your friend said, okay, there's more women narcissists. We are finding more and more. And I'm saying finding because a lot of this is, access to information, right? More and more narcissistic traits in women. So in psychology, when we're labeling and diagnosing people with mental health disorders, we use what is called the Diagnostical Statistical Manual, the DSM. Right now we're on version 5, right? That DSM is very Eurocentric, patriarchal, and colonial. Okay. So it does not account. It was written by a panel of white men, right? The APA, white middle-aged men, let's be honest, heterosexual middle-aged men. And there's different versions that come out, and the panels have become more and more diverse. But let's be clear, it's years of research, empirical data, and of course we can all, think about where does that data come from and what data was most available, right? And so what you see is when it comes to these cluster B disorders, which narcissism personality disorder falls into, what we would call a personality disorder versus a cognitive disorder or a mental disorder, we find that narcissism has been given a more masculine energy, and something like borderline personality disorder, right? If you think of Madonna's song, "You Keep on Pushing My Love to the Borderline," right? It's borderline is characterized by, emotional lability, being up and down, and, being dysregulated emotionally. So they're very quick to think borderline women, narcissism men, right? It is a bias. It is a labeling diagnostic bias, right? Depending on who is doing the diagnosis. Okay. So can we honestly say there's more men or women? I don't know. I will tell you that a female narcissist is a cold piece of work, and often goes very much, operates very much out in the open and isn't really called out in the same way because the bias. We're not looking to those traits in a woman, right? But if any of you all have been parented by a narcissistic parent, sometimes a mother, you will be able to spot those traits, right? Much more quicker in a woman. So yeah, that was probably a very long answer.
No, you brought up a lot of good points because, I think about two people that I know, male and female, that are narcissists, and yep, you bring up a good point because the woman I know, very out in the open, very like, and so what, and the male I know is more, like a snake. He knows how to charm and maneuver in a way where, people, this is just his personality. And it's like, until you live with them, no.
And what's interesting, a narcissist may look for a partner that, or maybe drawn, expresses a lot of, is always ready to support, right? And men will make their desires and opinions the center of attention, the center of the relationship, right? And that's often romanticized, right? I'm looking for my knight in shining armor, of course, right? To be put on a pedestal, to be made the queen, right? And so that's more socially acceptable than a man saying, I want a woman that puts my needs before her own, that's always ready to listen and be there for me. So I think women sometimes slip through the cracks of narcissism, but they're still displaying the characteristics.
I was just going to say, I feel like from the standpoint of someone who's in the military, I think that men are often viewed as macho. And so like when it comes to narcissism, it's often commingled, right, with macho, or like even let's just say geographically, right? I live presently in the DMV area. That's the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And even up north in New York, right? They carry more macho, forward aggressive personalities, right? So you may not notice the narcissism in a person who is in a space that is more forwardly macho, right? Their entire environment is about survival. And after meeting people from here, I lived in the projects my whole life, I may have a disposition, right? I may have certain characteristics. And when you come down to the South, where it's a bit more syrupy sweet, I think that narcissism is a bit easier to capture geographically, because people are naturally more kind-hearted. They're naturally more accommodating. And I think that, so for example, with a woman in the South, you could identify a narcissistic woman in the South much easier because she's not going to be as accommodating. She's going to think that everything is about her. She's going to make it a main character energy, right? But I think that's, like you said, where the cover is at for women, because on the fairy tale side of things, that's what society, you know, has taught young girls, right? So I would also even go a little bit deeper to say, like, the conditioning we have received, you know, via G.I. Joes, monster trucks, wrestling, Disney princess, blase, whatever, has intensified those main character factions in both parties. So like in the military, you may not notice it because a lot of people in the military are macho, right? Or on a police force, right? But, you know, if it's, like you said, if it, like, for instance, if it was another doctor, right? If it was another, you know, like there are certain cultures, certain dichotomies where, like, it may not be as identifiable because that's the general tone, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so hopefully what I was saying, but I think like South versus up North, right?
I can totally see that, because narcissism is a sociopathy, right? So there's a social aspect to it. And so definitely gender, you know, we've been socialized to a lot of these gender kind of norms and ways of being, right? And a narcissist needs other people. They need people. This is a parasitic type of disorder. It plays out in a relationship, right? And so, yeah, I can totally see how demographically, and, you know, I spent some time in Arlington, shout out to DMV. Oh my goodness, I missed it so much. But, you know, when geographically, I can see how some of these characteristics, right, are probably less common, right, in some areas, and more easily caught. Absolutely.
So I think that leads us kind of a good transition into our next question. What psychological factors might lead a woman to downplay or justify her narcissistic partner's abusive behavior?
So cognitive dissonance, right, is one psychological factor. And cognitive dissonance is when a person holds two contradictory beliefs, right? And it really causes psychological discomfort. For instance, you know, a woman may believe her partner loves her, yet the partner's abusive behavior contradicts this belief, right? If he loves me, he wouldn't do this, right? And so to reduce this psychological discomfort, you know, she might minimize the abuse or rationalize it as, oh, it's not that bad, you know, or as a result of, you know, he's stressed, he's got a lot of things going on. And that can thereby aligning her reality with what she believes is her partner's love, right? So that could be one. The other is, and you've probably heard of this, Stockholm syndrome, right? That bond that can develop between a captor and a captive, right? Or an abuser and a victim. And so in the context of a narcissistic relationship, the victim develops positive feelings towards the abuser, justifies the actions, even defends them to others, right? It's a bond, and it makes it difficult to leave the relationship or acknowledge its harmful, you know, effects or nature. And that is kind of similar to trauma bonding. You may have heard this term. That's, you know, I find a lot of that on therapy TikTok, as it's called. And that is, you know, and we can form trauma bonds, not just with partners, it can be with friends, but it's a strong emotional connection formed between, you know, a victim and an abuser. And it's continuously forged through this like cycle of abuse and intermittent positive reinforcement, right? So like that honeymoon. And so, you know, it's like that honeymoon period, right? Things die down, the tension dies down. So there's periods of kindness or affection, right, from the abuser, and it can lead to, you know, the woman can start to cling for hope and change. Like, okay, this, you know, this will get better, right? He's doing what he needs to do. Maybe he's, you know, went to therapy, or, you know, said he'll go to therapy, right? So, and it tends to minimize the abuse in light of these, you know, good moments. There's also learned helplessness, right? And that occurs when, you know, someone feels just like powerless to change their situation, due to just the repeated exposure to the negative events, right? And just believing they have no control. And so a woman may come to believe that she can escape, that, you know, trying to challenge the behavior, it's futile. It's gonna, you know, what's the point type thing, right? And so that may lead her to rationalize again or minimize the abuse, or just start to develop coping strategies. There could be cultural components, you know, societal norms, right? That dictate that maintaining the relationship or the family unit, right? That's paramount. Got to maintain the family unit, even at personal cost, right? And so these norms, we know, can pressure women to view their partner's behavior through a more forgiving lens, right? We don't want the judgment for failing, right? Which, you know, we sometimes our experience with failure isn't that great. So we don't want to fail, right? And we want to keep the relationship intact. We may fear isolation. You know, oftentimes there's situations where, you know, your abuser deliberately isolates the victim from, you know, support networks, family, peers, and makes them, you know, solely dependent on them, right? And so this can make it difficult for the victim to reach out for emotional support and sometimes financial support. You know, they're financially dependent, right, on the abuser. And so the fear of being alone and unsupported and, you know, unable to maybe care for themselves, that's a huge, right? That's a huge fear. And so that can, and then I think, you know, we're all hopeful that people will change, right? You know, some of us hold strong spiritual and religious beliefs, and we're faithful, right? And we just know that, you know, we can, that person can change, and there's something that we can say or do. They're gonna get it, right? Especially if the partner or the abuser occasionally shows remorse sometimes, right? Occasionally shows that they'll get it, these little glimpses of, you know, change. So that can make, you know, the women overlook and again excuse these behaviors and attribute them to external factors. Oh, you know, he had a bad childhood and he's stressed at work, and rather than acknowledging them as inherent patterns of the narcissistic's personality and behavior. So these all can work together, you know, and create a situation where the woman feels trapped in the relationship, unable to leave, compelled to justify, you know, downplay. And so honestly, you know, breaking through this cycle oftentimes requires external support, of some sort, right? And you know, development of a strong sense of self-worth, and really staying in reality and keeping that reality-based perspective around you as much as possible. So yeah, told you it was long.
I mean, but like you just hit me like a Mack truck. It was like, boom, because literally everything you said, I have done just about, 80% of the factors that you listed. It's like, wow, I wasn't there. Made the excuses, oh, he will change. Oh, well, oh, I'm so far away from family. Oh, we have this child. Oh, I want a different, household or than what I grew up in, but thank you for that. Thank you.
I want to just point out that energy. Oh, the parasite that he's just growing. That's what he needs, right? That's what they call the narcissistic supply. You to be in that place. Oh, I can't. Oh, and justifying, right? And he's just sucking, right? Because for them, that's love and admiration. And what they, it's a very warped sense of love.
I was going to say, the other thing I think is, so I feel like I had a much more short-term experience, but I feel like I experienced narcissism in my work environment on a regular basis, right? A lot of males I've encountered, and some women as well in the military, that's like a normal, because I think it all depends on your reason for joining, right? If you joined, right, to be like edified, to be glorified for the sacrifice that you're making, right, then that job that you're doing, and people are like, oh, you're doing.
That's what you call a communal narcissist, someone that believes themselves to be exceptionally altruistic and caring and helpful and patriotic. And they want to be recognized and admired. And what better way to do that but the military?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that I noticed when experiencing them in that environment is the lack of boundaries. Like you may say, you know what, this makes me uncomfortable. Like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, look, stop being so tight about things. This is how we do things. Or also, because I've experienced this a lot as just a Black female in the workspace, they want to figure you out so they can figure out how to manipulate. And so if you don't go drink with them, if you don't talk stuff with them, they don't have something on you that they can use, then you become almost like they are attracted more to you. Like, what is this mystery that this person has? And why aren't they, what's the word I'm looking for? Why are they immune to my charms? Why don't they respond the way everyone else? Why are they opposed to me? And I feel like I've had if there's like an adverse effect on top of narcissism, it's like being a person that has not been able to be cajoled by them in my workspace. And so when they can't, they're just like, she's a horrible person.
And
she's a bitch,
that angers them, right? So they're not getting that admiration that angers them, right? And so that now you may get the retaliation, right? In the workplace, it's, and so that's one of the things, like, I know we said like we're throwing these labels around and there's all this talk about narcissism, but I can tell you, like, if you can learn how to deal with a narcissist and do your research, even if someone doesn't have the full blown, disorder, right? They may have traits. You'll learn how to deal with difficult people. You'll learn how to deal with, office politics and work, because they're all over, right? So yeah,
I agree. That's a very, very good point. That's a very good point. Because they might not necessarily have the diagnosis, but they may have a lot of those traits. And when you learn how to compartmentalize and really just understand that, you can't change this person, and learn how to just roll with it, I think it just makes things so much better. You spoke to, coming into your power, as a victim. So, like, how do we get there? What are the strategies, some of the interventions or coping strategies that you would, give a woman or man, dealing with a narcissistic partner and co-parent, in these cases? All right, guys, we're going to stop right there. We need to take a pause for the cause. Was this not a great start to an episode? Wow. We're going to come back next Sunday, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with Mrs. Amarri Simms, and get right back into the conversation. Until then, look over any notes you took, reach out, DM us, or email us with any questions you have. You can send us DMs on Instagram, email us, Muvahood Unfiltered, the podcast at gmail.com. We want to engage with you guys. All right, we're going to come back next week with part 2. Peace.